Jovan, Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, Lakers beat writer for The Athletic, and welcome to another Lakers postgame reaction show. Just got back from Crypto.com Arena, where the Lakers fell 101-93 in old school final score to drop to 11-8 and 7-3 at home. LA has now been eliminated from the NBA Cup. It's not official yet, but essentially, I will touch on that with one of my takeaways. This was the third straight home loss for LA, losing to Orlando, Denver, and now Oklahoma City. This one was shades of the Orlando loss. They didn't lose it at the free throw line, but certainly several key late game mistakes that ended up tilting this game in OKC's favor. But before we get into the three takeaways and before we get into the Q&A portion of the show, you guys know the drill. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. So the Lakers lost 101-93. This was a close game, a game that went down to the wire, and then a couple of big mistakes ended up leading to OKC winning this one. I think it could have gone either direction if not for a couple of those mistakes. I think OKC, it was shifting in their direction late. So for those who were on my last stream, I did say I thought that this was going to be a close game that OKC won. So it kind of was in line with what I thought, but certainly a bounce back performance for the Lakers against a really good opponent. I would say, in my opinion, the best team in the West, the second best team in the NBA, and a team better than Denver and Phoenix, who both just blew out the Lakers. So from that perspective, again, you don't want to take it necessarily a moral victory, because at this point, and with the history of LeBron and AD, like, there are no moral victories. It's either you win the game or you lose the game. But I thought there was certainly some encouraging things with the defense, with the supporting cast. Dalton, again, looked really good. D'Lo had one of his better games of the season and now has had consecutive good games back-to-back. Had a season-high 9 rebounds for D'Lo. And I thought Max Christie, until the brain fart late in the game, had a solid game defensively, and LA chose to close with him. And then I thought Rui was solid earlier in the game, especially. And AD for OKC was able to take AD out. He only took 9 shots, was 5 for 7 at the free throw line, finished with 15, 12, 7 assists, but 4 blocks. And I thought this was one of AD's best defensive performances of the season, if not his best, considering all the firepower that OKC has. They have so much shooting, so much ball handling. Basically, everybody can at least attack a closeout on OKC. So, he switched on to Shea masterfully, and I thought that he did a good job of keeping Shea in front of him. And Shea still got his 36, 6 and 9 for Shea, but he did so on 13 of 28 shooting. Did get to the free throw line 8 times, made 7 of them. But I thought AD, the defense had slipped for AD over the last week and a half, even maybe 2 weeks. And I thought this was more of a vintage Anthony Davis all defensive player of the year caliber performance. So certainly some positives for the Lakers, but that only gets you so far when you fail to execute the way that they did in crunch time. And when you lose another home game, you lose another game to a team that you are trying to measure yourself against. And really, we talked about this stretch of 5 games for the Lakers of Orlando, Denver, Phoenix, San Antonio, and OKC, and this being a 5-game sample to really measure and just see where the Lakers currently are. And they went 1-4 in this stretch, and 2 of the games were blowouts, 2 of the games were close. They should have won the Orlando game. Denver and Phoenix, ran all over them in the second half. And then this one, I think OKC was probably going to win, but the Lakers still made two crucial mistakes late. Max Christie fouls. There's a miscommunication there with JJ Redick. JJ Redick is calling out a defensive coverage. Max Christie did not hear him and took it as that the Lakers had a foul to give. So he fouls Shea on a drive, which sends him to the free throw line. He basically ices the game there, but then Austin Reeves on a sideline out of bounds play has D'Lo. From our vantage point, we could kind of see, because we were in the corner there. D'Lo flashes to like corner wing area. I don't remember specifically where he was, but D'Lo was open. Austin's looking for Dalton. He tries to hit Dalton. Jalen Williams steals the ball, goes and dunks it, and that's the game right there. So I'm going to touch on the errors, and I think we got to talk about LeBron and the way that he's been playing lately. But those two errors iced the game for OKC. Again, I think the way that this game had been going, it felt like OKC was in control and always had an answer for any time the Lakers would go on like one of those mini runs of, 4-0, 5-2, like whatever. OKC would always respond with an offensive rebound, kick out for a three, or like get to the free throw line. They had that's a really good team. Like I don't think there's any shame in losing to OKC. I don't think there's any shame in losing a close game to OKC. Again, I've been on record saying I think this is the best team in the West. I think this is a team that could and probably should win 60 games this season. They have one of the top 5 players in the league in Shea. They have another young all-star caliber guy in Jalen Williams, another one in Chet, who was out tonight. No Alex Caruso for them as well. But like OKC is just all wing defenders, perimeter defenders. Like the difference between these two teams in terms of speed, athleticism, even length in some instances, like almost two totally different makeups of these rosters. OKC has a bunch of guys who are quick, who can shoot, who can attack off the dribble, and who are solid defensively, to really good defensively in some cases. So this was a tough team, a tough matchup for LA, and ultimately it was a close game. LA has a front court advantage certainly against OKC, but they weren't able to leverage it in the way that they typically have been, with LeBron and AD combining for just 27 points on 22 shots. But let's get into our 3 takeaways from tonight's game. So first, the Lakers have been eliminated from the NBA Cup, and I'm going to try to present here I'm going to share my screen, which I've never done this before on a live. So here we are. This is the NBA Cup standings, and group doesn't really matter because LA is not winning their group. But right now, the Lakers are 9th in the West here, as you can see. So you got the 3 leaders for each group. Right now, it's Houston, Golden State, and San Antonio. But then for the wild card, it's Dallas at 2-1 due to their plus 41 point differential. Phoenix right there, OKC right there. Remember, those are 2 teams in LA's group. LA's all the way down at 9. And even if these go somehow in LA's favor, where all these teams lose, which I don't even think is possible, but let's just say it happens. Minnesota at minus 13 is already 2-2 and has a better point differential. So the Lakers are not going to get into the wild card spot. They're not advancing, and they are eliminated from the NBA Cup. And this was certainly a tougher group than last year, but it also felt like 2-2 is probably right given the other 4 teams. And now LA we don't know the schedule yet, but it will be them either playing on the 12th or 13th at home or away, and then on the 15th or 16th home or away. So they're going to have like 2 games in like a 10-day stretch, which could be a nice break to get practices in, to reset some things, to get guys healthy potentially. Austin Reeves had a nasty spill in this one, got sideswiped by Shea Gilgeous-Alexander and Isaiah Hartenstein in opposite directions, and looked like for a second he dislocated his shoulder. then I wasn't sure if it was like an elbow thing. We did not speak with Austin post game, and there was no update on him. He did manage to, he left the game late in the first half, came back midway through the third quarter, and ended up closing the game. So it seemed like he was able to play through it. He actually made the 2 free throws after he was fouled, but we'll see in terms of Austin's future availability. I do wonder if maybe the adrenaline and sort of the moment, he's able to play through it, but then he has to miss a game or two or something. Lakers play again on Sunday, but the Lakers will not be defending their NBA Cup crown. And I think the one positive with it is we saw, going back to last year, just how much effort and exertion it took, and playing 3 knockout games. So, they would have, had they advanced, they would have played either a home or away game, single elimination. Then if they won that, go to Vegas for the semifinals and finals, and just playing like that strenuous type of basketball. On the one hand, it can be like an iron sharpens iron type of thing. But on the other hand, it can be very draining. And as we saw with the Lakers coming out of Vegas, and even the Indiana Pacers coming out of Vegas, both teams had a come down period where they really struggled and dropped a bunch of games that they probably shouldn't have. And then that also then led to the Lakers experimenting with the infamous all wing lineup and benching D'Lo and Austin and Rui all at the same time. And like just some very questionable decisions coming out of the NBA Cup, and then sort of overreacting to the skid that they went on. So if there's one potential positive from this, obviously the Lakers want to win every game that they play, and certainly could have performed better in especially the Phoenix game. But even tonight, I think the one thing is that they won't have to deal with the potential consequences of the fallout from going to Vegas, and just the intensity of it, and really playing like this March Madness style basketball. But that's really the only positive, because obviously losing to Phoenix in the manner that they did, and even losing tonight, I think it's kind of been a resetting in terms of where LA is in the West. Like I think it's just kind of undeniable right now that there are clearly OKC, Denver, Phoenix. I'd probably throw Golden State in there as well. Like that tier of the West is just on a different tier than the Lakers right now, in my opinion. And I think that's been pretty clear with them losing 4 of 5, and all 4 losses coming against pretty good teams. So that's my first takeaway, is just the NBA Cup. The crown will not be defended. The title defense ends early. They don't even make it to the knockout stage. And it wasn't necessarily surprising, given OKC and Phoenix are just 2 really good teams, and the Phoenix game was going to be on the road. OKC didn't really matter where it was going to be. The Lakers were going to be the underdogs in that matchup. But yeah, so that is settled now. Takeaway number 2 for me is going to be just too many unforced errors. And I already mentioned Max Christie has the brain fart, and it's inexcusable. It does sound like there was a miscommunication there and a misinterpretation of, he read what JJ was trying to tell him as foul, and you have a foul. So I think part of that, I don't know what the coverage was that JJ was calling, and it is on the player ultimately to know the foul situation. So I think a bulk of the blame goes on Max Christie there. Now, Max was beaten on the play, so there's a chance like maybe AD makes gets the stop there. But I also think with how Shea was playing, and with him being such an elite mid-range scorer, there was also a chance that if Max doesn't foul there and he just gets beat the way he was beat, maybe Shea just hits a shot there, and we'll never know. That's you can always play kind of Monday morning quarterback with the end of game situations, but certainly a big mistake from Max, and it was unfortunate just because I thought he had been playing well defensively. I thought he had been staying in front of Shea and had done the best job on Shea tonight, and earned a closing spot when, obviously it's like this was a guy who was out of the rotation 2 weeks ago. Now he's closing against the best team in the West, and I felt like he deserved it, but came up, big mistake, and there's really no other way around it. Then Austin has the turnover. For Austin, I have a little bit more grace just because it was like he had an off night in general, but he also was clearly hampered post return from the injury. Like he did hit, I want to say I forgot he hit a 3 or something like late in the fourth, but outside of that, Austin was not himself, and JJ chose to close with him, and he finished with 11 points, 3 of 11 shooting, 1 for 9 on threes, 5 turnovers. So he and LeBron, and that's going to be my next point. Like, this is almost a subcategory, but LeBron had 5 turnovers. Austin had 5 turnovers. D'Lo had 4 turnovers. And that right there is 14 turnovers. LA finished with 17. OKC scored 20 points on those 17 turnovers. But again, with Austin, I will give him a little bit of grace just because I felt like he did not look. It was an off night, again, off night in general, but he didn't look the same. If anything, that's on JJ to kind of read the situation and go. I think with potentially D'Lo there, who I thought again had a pretty good game offensively. I think defensively was targeted a bit, but I thought it was interesting that D'Lo didn't close. Like, if there was, in general, I've kind of understood the not closing with D'Lo because he is a defensive liability and he often has not been performing well offensively and shooting the ball well. But tonight I thought he did for the most part, and JJ still chose not to close with him. But the real person here that's been the main culprit with the turnovers has been LeBron. And this is 9 straight games for LeBron with 4 or more turnovers, 4 straight games with 5 or more turnovers. And LeBron, I mean, just by nature, if you look at the turnover leaders, it's always the Lukas, the LeBrons, the Trae Youngs, the James Hardens, like the high usage, heliocentric type guys who dominate the ball tend to be higher turnover. Like there's often a correlation there between the more you have the ball, the more likely you are to turn the ball over, just because it's a sheer numbers thing. Where if you're dribbling or running, the average team has about 100 possessions a game. And if you're running 50, 60, 70 possessions out there as a ball dominant ball handler, having 5 turnovers in 70 possessions, it's not that crazy. Now, of course, with LeBron, he's a high usage guy, but he's still been lower or now kind of closer to AD, and he's not in that like Luka Trae conversation right now, and just clearly like there's been some slippage with him recently offensively, not just with the turnovers, but with the shot making. Missing point blank shots. His jumper's been off tonight. He was 5 for 13, 0 for 4 from 3. So LeBron, he's still contributing in other ways. He's still been rebounding the ball well. He's still been playmaking well. And like, he's always going to give you a baseline level of performance. But when you factor in, I think largely subpar defense, plus the turnovers, plus the shot making struggles, it's like, he's been harmful at times the last few games and for stretches this season. But I specifically would say this recent stretch has been very uncharacteristic of LeBron. Again, it's rare. I think he's this harmful in like multiple ways. And it really has and tonight he had a couple of jump passes where, and maybe this is like a father time thing, or maybe he's kind of adjusting to a slightly diminished athleticism, but it felt like he would jump and he'd be reading the situation and then he would land before he can he was making the pass as he's landing. And it almost felt like his hang time was like less than he was accustomed to or less than he expected. And that to me, it was just like, I want to say 4 of his 5 turnovers were like travels and just kind of inexcusable. Like he had a couple in early offense / transition where he just traveled, and like the focus, the engagement has not quite been there for LeBron the last few games. It has coincided with a couple of big losses against Denver and Phoenix. And it's not, I mean, he still had some impressive moments, so I don't want to pile on LeBron. I don't want to put this all on him, but from a decision making and turnover perspective, he's had some very uncharacteristic turnovers, and I'm just not quite sure what's been going on. And you're allowed to have rough patches throughout the season, so maybe this ends up just being a bit of a rough patch. Like, obviously he had been playing fairly well before this stretch, and we've talked about him fending off Father Time and the demise of LeBron being premature, but this has really been a tough stretch, especially from a turnover perspective from LeBron. But even some nights, just the jumper hasn't been there. But tonight, like, I know people want to focus on the Max Christie foul, and I think that's kind of been the one that's gotten the most attention. The Austin turnover sealed it, and both of those guys, obviously, those were game deciding and sealing mistakes. But I think really it was an accumulation of mistakes throughout this game with the turnovers. OKC had 15 offensive rebounds. LA, despite having a size advantage, struggled to box out, and I think OKC puts you in some binds with how many times they're just able to swing the ball around and continue to attack closeouts, and like they just get you in rotation. And LA did a bad job of, I think, countering that in terms of they match physicality well, but they did a bad job of tracking OKC's guards in particular. Like, looking at it, Kayson Wallace had 5 offensive rebounds. Shea had 3. Aaron Wiggins had 1. Kenrich Williams had 1. Dort had 2. And then obviously Hartenstein had 3. So, they were just relentless on the glass. And another game, technically the two teams tied, both with 47 rebounds. But OKC, I thought, had all the timely offensive rebounds, and that was a big factor. They also only turned the ball over 10 times, which led to only 5 Lakers points. So that was the turnover battle. Like, OKC took, due to the turnovers and the offensive rebounds, OKC took 20 more shots than the Lakers. And it was partly offset at the free throw line, but still, you give up 20 more opportunities, and to only lose by 8 is kind of it's impressive, if anything, right? Like, it probably could have been a blowout if OKC shot better. And then third and final takeaway, this one's going to be a relatively quick one before I get into the Q&A, but I think the Lakers have made some progress defensively over the last couple of games. So the San Antonio game, to me, was one of their best defensive games of the season. I thought they did a really good job switching 1 through 5, and the guards were physical, and that was also an advantageous matchup. I talked about that after the Spurs game, of like, though they have a lot of speed on the perimeter, the Lakers had a lot of the strength and size advantage, and when they're playing a smaller backcourt or a backcourt that can't really overpower them, LA, I think, because of their front court, that's when they can dictate the physicality of a game. And I thought they did a really good job of that against San Antonio. OKC is a different monster. They have a lot of size and athleticism and length. They do have a smaller front court, especially with Chet out. The other Jalen Williams is out as well. So they did play some centerless stretches. Hartenstein actually played the second most minutes on the team, and that was partly by design, just because they needed him out there against AD. But I think that the Lakers, so some encouraging things, like 101 points in 2024 is a good defensive performance. OKC shot under 41%. They shot under 33% on threes. And they also had only 38 points in the paint, which is the fewest number that the Lakers have allowed this season. Flip side was Lakers only had 32 points in the paint themselves, which was a season low as well. But I think LA, had LA won this game, I think a lot of it would have been on the defensive end. I already mentioned Anthony Davis. I thought that this was, from an engagement, activity, focus perspective, AD was great. He switched on to Shea well. He switched on to all their ball handlers and did a really good job of keeping them in front of him and forcing those guys into tough shots or them just having to swing the ball and kind of get off of it. And then when he was the help side guy, or just rotating, roaming. He did a really good job of helping at the right moments, crowding the paint, contesting shots, blocking shots. So I thought AD was awesome. I thought Austin, all things considered, did a solid, like he's done a solid job on Shea before. I thought he did solid, but Max and Cam and even Gabe, another, I mean, what for one, but -7 was the only bench guy with a minus plus minus. Like those guys come in and I thought in the second quarter they changed the game, because first quarter Thunder up 8 and it feels like it's trending toward a potentially decisive OKC win, and Lakers muck things up in the second quarter and even in the third quarter, and then before OKC kind of distances it or begins to distance it in the fourth quarter. But I think LA's bench mob made an impact. Like I said, I thought D'Lo did a good job on the glass. He was one of the only perimeter guys rebounding the ball well, and then he had 17 points. Max, Cam, and Gabe, I thought all defended reasonably well. So those guys came in. They didn't contribute much on the offensive end. I mean, Max had 8 points and got to the free throw line a couple times. But yeah, I think LA's defense, like, it's one thing to do it against San Antonio, who I think is a team kind of punching above its weight. I've said that with them. But to do it against OKC, who's just one of the best teams in the league, one of the best two-way teams in the league, I mean, they only had 4 guys in double figures. Like, they missed a lot of good looks, especially Isaiah Joe went 1 for 7 on threes. Kayson Wallace was 0 for 3. Even Shea was 3 for 10. Like, I think they certainly could have shot the ball. They could have easily hit 23s tonight, and we're talking about a blowout loss, but they didn't. I thought LA rotated well. They switched well. And again, only 38 points in the paint. They did a good job of collapsing the paint when needed, and really, I think, helping on, because in the first quarter, OKC was waltzing to the rim. I tweeted that out. They 5 of their first shots were within 7. 5 of the first makes were within 7 feet, and 4 of those were layups. So, like, the beginning of the game, OKC was just getting to the rim at will, and then from that point on, LA adjusted and was being much more aggressive in terms of their help, and then sprang back out to shooters. And OKC still got some good shots. You're gonna have to give up something, but I thought LA did a good job of closing off the paint, and that was what kept them in this game. Because offensively, as I mentioned, LeBron and AD 27 points on 22 shots. Dalton had 20. D'Lo had 17. Austin had 11, and then the rest of the group was all single digits, and like not the best supporting cast performance in terms of the offensive end. But with all that said, let's get into the Q&A portion. I see we got some super chats. First one from Vanessa and Hunter. Thank you for the super chat. No trade saves the season with how LeBron has been. I would say with the recent version of LeBron, yes. I want to give it some more time and see if he bounces back to the player he was, because it wasn't. I'm going to pull up LeBron's basketball reference or his game logs, because it feels like it wasn't that long ago that he was having some pretty good games. Like, Orlando, he was 31, 10 and 7. He had that 3-point avalanche. Utah, 26 and 12 assists. Memphis, the game in Memphis, had 35, 12 and 14. I mean, he's had a bunch of triple doubles, but certainly from like the scoring, the shooting, even though he's had, he's actually, I think it's probably dipped. I don't have the current number in front of me. Shooting 40% on threes entering tonight. So like, I hear what you're saying, and I think it depends on which LeBron we get. I don't want to be a prisoner of the moment or suffer from recency bias. The turnovers have been an issue, and I think the finishing has been an issue at times. The 3-point like jump shot happy, 3-point reliance, like being too jump shot happy. I think that's been an issue. But this guy, I mean, he has had some really good games offensively, so I don't want to overreact, but it's certainly something to be concerned of, something to monitor. And if this continues and this is just the new normal, obviously I'm with you. I think LA's ceiling lowers, but it's been the turnovers. It's been 9 games. I would say like bad games has only been like 3 in a row. So if this continues, then, I will change my perspective on that. Super chat from Dylan. How about Vucevic and DFS? Price for both has reduced. Well, thank you for the super chat. I'm on board with DFS. I think that I've been on board with DFS for a long time, and I would give up a first for DFS in a heartbeat if I'm the Lakers. As for Vucevic, I am less sold on him. I don't know if you guys saw Kranjis posted some of his rim protection numbers, and this is how he rates against, I forget if it's all centers or if it's all players in the league. I think it might be all players in the league, but he was like a D and an F in a bunch of defensive categories. And I just think that like to just have a better center or a bigger body, sure, you could talk me into it within a certain context of like a certain price. And I know Jake Fisher reported 2 second-round picks. To me, it kind of depends what you're giving up. Like, I wouldn't give up Rui for him. D'Lo, it's tough. Like, I think he's better than D'Lo, but I don't think he's worth like 2 picks on top of, like, I don't know. It's tough. So Vucevic, I'm less sold on. I think the Lakers need to go for more of a defensive-minded big if they go for another center. But DFS, I would do that. Super chat from Dotan. I don't know how to pronounce the accent above the O, but I hope I didn't butcher it too bad. This isn't on Max. It's in giving OKC 20 extra possessions. Yeah, that was the point I was trying to make. Like, certainly Max had a brain fart, and there has to be better communication between the coaching staff and the players have to know how many fouls they have. And he was the only guy who there was no one else rotating over to try and foul or whatever. So like Max owned it. I should have mentioned that as well. Like Max took accountability. He owned the mistake, and he said he has to be better. He has to know that. And so I think he handled the situation well. He didn't try to make an excuse or put the blame on JJ or whatever. So, but yeah, I mean, 20 more shots for OKC to me was the difference. And for as good as the defense was, the 15 offensive rebounds and only forcing 10 turnovers, LA continues to struggle in terms of being a playmaking defense. Like they can block shots, but they're not really turning you over, making you uncomfortable in that way. They're more of a reactive defense than a proactive defense. And again, the 15 offensive rebounds, 20 extra shots, like that was the game right there. Another super chat from Dylan. LeBron and AD need 3-and-D athletic wing/shooter. I mean, that was the championship team. Alex Caruso, KCP, Kyle Kuzma, Danny Green, even Markieff Morris was sort of like a 4.5 version of that. They did have the 2 rim running, shot blocking centers, which Avail and Dwight, but for the most part, like the most successful role players outside of, I would say, like Austin and D'Lo have fit that 3-and-D mold. And even Austin, I think has improved a lot defensively to like, he does more offensively than just shoot threes, but like you could technically throw that label on him if you really wanted to stretch it. But yeah, like I think that's the recipe to maximizing the team around them. Doten again, thank you for the super chat. Bro, y'all got to start asking JJ about this favoritism that's starting to rear its head. No way Gabe should be getting minutes. D'Lo should close over AR, even start, and Koloko instead of Braun at the 5. So I mean, I've asked about Gabe, and JJ he clearly, so Gabe has become, he's decreased in terms of playing time and role. But I mean, I think right now it's just trying to kind of keep him engaged and not completely bury him and just bench him outright. I think we're probably at that point. And I think tonight I will say for tonight's matchup, like Koloko, I don't think Koloko is good enough to have played against OKC's small lineups. I think if OKC had their traditional Chet and Jalen Williams and they were playing often a center when Hartenstein was off the floor or just a center at all times, I think Koloko could play 8, 10, 12 minutes. Against this team, like they are really good at playing small ball. They have played small ball the last 2 years and they're really used to it. It's a different wrinkle for them. So I don't have an issue with Koloko not playing in this one. Maybe if you want to throw him out there when AD was out there and kind of just try a too big look, but I don't think Koloko is good enough defensively in terms of his foot speed, his rotations, his decision making to be able to defend a 5-out look the way that OKC was playing tonight. So I think in general Koloko should be playing, right? Especially if Jackson Hayes is out. But tonight I was okay with it. Gabe, I'm with you. I disagree on Austin versus D'Lo. I will say for tonight that I would have been okay with D'Lo closing over Austin given how the game was going and who was performing. I just thought Austin had an off night and didn't look like himself after coming back. Like he still is the better defender. And I think ultimately, if you look at, I think JJ has kind of, it's almost been a Dalton versus D'Lo thing at times for him where he probably doesn't want two guys that teams are really going to pick on out there. But I didn't necessarily agree with the D'Lo benching at the end of the game. And really, I was kind of like, if D'Lo could play like this and still not close the game, it really shows the coaching staff's lack of trust in him, in my opinion. And if he's not going to close in like this type of game, then, I really think he becomes expendable. Then it's like at that point, you might as well just trade him because it's kind of like no matter how well he could. Now, I will say, I think defensively, they were targeting him, they were going at him and scoring and getting good shots. So I think, but they were also doing that to Dalton and Dalton had it going a little bit more than D'Lo. So, but yeah, I mean, I thought D'Lo probably should have closed, but in general, Austin's had a better season. I think Austin's a better player. And I don't see that changing. So that part I will disagree with. Another super chat from Marley. Is that Via Senor? 14 minutes for Gabe is just 14 too many. I love JJ, but he's got to shrink the rotation to 9. He seems like he's insisting on keeping him in the rotation. Yeah, so I just touched on that. But so tonight it was 9 with no Koloko. With Koloko or Hayes in there, obviously that's a 10-man rotation. And I'm with you. I think there might be some matchups where maybe Gabe makes a little bit more sense compared to Cam, that like maybe that becomes an either or thing. But in general, I think Cam's been better. And I think Cam, technically Cam played less than Gabe tonight. He played a minute and a half less, but I'm with you guys. I've been saying, I've been on the same page. I've been saying like Gabe should play less than Max. That has officially happened. I've now gotten to the point the last couple of games, he should just be out of the rotation. I've also been on the side of give Quincy a shot. I think we're a ways away from that, but Gabe has certainly been minimized, but outright cut from the rotation, like it's probably worth a question or a follow-up, but I think JJ has been cleared for him. It's been the defense and the professionalism and the reliability, but I just think the offense has been so bad that it's detrimental. Okay. Super chat from J.R. Medrano. Trading the picks for a star/role players should be the move. The Lakers would still have picks in 26, 28, 30 for their scouting department to draft. Yeah, so I I would say I lean more toward role players. It depends what your definition of a star is. Like, do you consider Zach LaVine a star? Do you consider Brandon Ingram a star? Where's your delineation for a star? Because I think it's relatively subjective, right? But I would lean more toward the role player route. And if you could get like, I think the four most enticing names to me that seem to be out there are, I would even say five. I would say in some order, loosely, like Walker Kessler, Jeremy Grant, Cam Johnson, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Bruce Brown. And if you could get two of those five, if you're the Lakers, so that's either a starting caliber center / backup center in Kessler, and then four wings ranging from like big wings to smaller wings, but Bruce Brown can play bigger than his size. I think getting two of those five would be a win for the Lakers, especially if the price is something like Rui and Gabe. Like two of Rui, Gabe, D'Lo, Vando, and a pick or two for two of those guys. Like two of those four Lakers plus a pick or two for two of those five guys in some combination, whether it's two separate trades or a 3-team trade or whatever. That to me is a successful trade deadline or trade season for the Lakers. So I'm with you. I think the role player route, I've been team, like, if you're the Lakers, just go for it and see where it lands. But certainly they need some more size, athleticism, length, toughness, rebounding, defensive versatility. And I think any form of like two of those five guys helps in that category. And then a guy like Cam Johnson's going to tilt more offensive, but the way he's been shooting the ball, he's a game changer. Like, imagine if it's, if they could get, let's say, Bruce Brown and Cam Johnson, then it's like, Austin, you could go with some combination of Austin, Dalton, Bruce Brown, Cam Johnson, LeBron, AD. And of course, LeBron and AD will be out there, but the other four guys can be split among three positions depending on the matchup, who's playing well. So I think that's the way to go if I'm the Lakers. Another one from Nick T. Thank you for the super chat. Reeves has been awful on both ends. Lakers messed up not trading him for DeJounte Murray. Reeves has reached his ceiling, which the Leprechaun House. I'm not sure what that means. I don't know if that's a reference that I just don't understand. I don't think Austin had a good game tonight, so I'm not going to disagree with you there. I think in general, he has been pretty solid to good. I'm going to pull up his season. Well, maybe I'll just go to the Lakers NBA.com stats because those are updated post game. This season, Austin is averaging 17 points a game, shooting 44% from the floor, 36% on threes, 77% at the line. Could certainly be better there. 3.5 rebounds, 5 assists, 2 turnovers, a steal. So if you look at compared to previous year, this is his most points per game, most field goal attempts per game, most 3-point attempts per game. The shot has regressed recently. His percentages have dipped. The assists are a little bit lower than last year, and there's been a shift to him being more off the ball and the ball being in LeBron's hands more. Career high in steals. And yeah, I think Austin has slipped a bit lately. I think kind of similar to Rui. He had a bit of a hotter start to the season, but I don't think Austin has peaked. I think Austin on balance has been better than last season. And I think in terms of like, should they have traded him at some point? I think that's also subjective. Like, DeJounte Murray got injured and is just returning now. So I don't know, like, if we're adjusting the timelines, I don't know, like, where you factor that in. And that was a big blow for the Pelicans. So, but I think I don't know if Austin plus 2 picks puts because that's the thing. It was going to be Austin plus 2 picks. So the Lakers would be out of bullets right now. They would just have DeJounte Murray instead of Austin. Maybe they threw in Gabe or they would have had to have some matching salary there. But Lakers would be out of bullets, and I don't know if DeJounte Murray is like that level of an upgrade where like now you just don't have, like, they would have had some pick swaps. They would have had some second round picks to play with, but realistically Lakers aren't upgrading the roster from there. And now maybe there's a ripple effect where they don't re-sign D'Lo and like it's a sliding doors moment where there's all these ripples. But I think largely that the roster would have been similar to what it is now with DeJounte Murray instead of Austin. And like, is that a better roster? Sure. But is it that much better to the level I think the Lakers need to get to? I don't think so. So, but maybe you disagree with that. You can't see this. Thank you for the super chat. Where do the Lakers go from here? Well, they go to Utah tomorrow for a 4-game road trip. They're playing Utah, Minnesota. It's a back-to-back. Then they go to Miami and Atlanta. I know that's not really what you mean, but I think like Utah is a game they obviously should win, and Minnesota is going to be a tough back-to-back. That's a tough place to play. They're going to want to get their lick back against the Lakers after losing on opening night, and they've been struggling in general. So they're going to be motivated, and I don't know if they play the night before. So I'm going to assume they're rested, but maybe they do play the night before. But that's going to be a tough back-to-back, and then Miami will be a tough one, and even Atlanta will probably be a sneaky kind of trap game. So no, this is a tough stretch for the Lakers. That's why I think ideally they should have tried to go like 3-2 in this stretch that they just had, where they went 1-4. But yeah, I mean, I think they're going to be fine. I think they've looked really good against bad teams and okay teams. It's been the good to great teams that they have struggled with, and really they don't have many of those types of teams in this upcoming stretch. It is some tough road environments though. So the road trip again, like, I think the goal should be 3-1, but it might end up being like 2-2 or 1-3, to be honest. David Furman, thoughts on Patrick Williams? What would Chicago want? I like Patrick Williams. I think the contract, I'm going to pull up his stats for the season just to make sure I'm kind of assessing it correctly. So he's averaging 10 points a game, 5 rebounds, shooting 40% on almost 5 3-point attempts per game. And he's 23. And I'm just pulling up the contract again. Yeah, he's under contract for, after this season, 3 more years. Then he has a player option, so he's making $18 million. I like him. I don't know. I would assume they'd want at least a first, and I'd be open to that depending on who is, like, ideally if you could send like Gabe and JHS or something, like I'd be interested in that. Gabe, JHS, Christian Wood, something like that. Though that gets, now they're getting 3 players, so that they got to figure that out. But D'Lo and Rui are a little tough because, I mean, maybe you could talk me to D'Lo, but I don't know. That's tough. I don't think they're going to try and trade him. It seems like they're going to try and trade Levine or Vucevic. Dylan, OKC played physical like it was a playoff game. Yeah. And this is now, we saw it against OKC. We saw it against Denver. And I would say a little bit of against Phoenix, so they're more of a finesse team. But like, especially I would say Orlando, Denver, and tonight, the Lakers have been pushed around a bit at times by more physical teams, and they haven't had the same whistle necessarily. And that's something that I think they need to kind of like be better with, is there's going to be nights where you don't get a great whistle. And if you are so reliant on getting to the free throw line, and now you're complaining, and now you're not getting back in transition, and now you're letting it affect your game, and now you're trying to flail even more to get a foul call, like that's where I think some of this stuff can compound for LA and become a bit of a negative. And that's I'd say, it's like in general their rim first, paint heavy attack is good, and it's led to a really good offense. It's led to some easy baskets, putting a lot of pressure on defenses, and that leads to kick out and spray out threes. But at the same time, because their free throw advantage is such a big part of their offense, when they have a night where they're not shooting free throws well, or they're not getting to the free throw line, and it's not as much of an advantage, that's when you see the offense can struggle, and there could be this compounding effect of not getting back in transition and complaining and all that stuff. Okay, let's get into the chat. I'm going to try and go about 10 to 15 more minutes. I still have some writing, and then I got to pack for the road trip. Jay, most of the trades people suggest seem great for the Lakers, horrible for the other team. You're not wrong. I mean, I think that's kind of the mindset of any fan base, is you're going to try and do like the best trade possible for your team. The one thing I will say with the Lakers is, like, no one's really trading for their, for mid-sized guys because of their value or what they're going to contribute. They're trading for them for the picks. And that's the thing that I think that the Lakers also have to acknowledge is, like, I mean, like, D'Lo has some value as an expiring contract. Gabe and Vando, I mean, Gabe he was injured his first year in LA. He's been awful his second year in LA. He still's got one more year left. And then Vando has, I want to say, 3 more years left after this year, and has not been healthy now for like going on, almost a full year. So those 2 contracts, I don't think people are looking at them as like positives or even neutrals, and like types of like those are just more, assets or just contracts on a book rather than like contributing players right now. And then for Rui, he's a very divisive guy where I think it's really more of a team by team situation in terms of like how they view Rui. Is he starting? Is he coming off the bench? Like how deep of like an Orlando, for example, doesn't necessarily need a Rui because they have so much front court depth. But he'd actually kind of be interesting in OKC as just looking at like teams that Lakers recently played. But and OKC could probably trade for him with the 1 million first round picks that they have. But I would say like that's the one thing in mind with any trade really with the Lakers is like they're gonna have to throw in a pick. Or if it's a player you don't have to throw in a pick for, then that's a flawed. Like then there's probably something wrong, or I don't say wrong with the player, but like unattractive about that contract or the situation where, like, if I'm the Lakers, I almost would only do a trade where I have to give up a pick because I at least know I'm getting something back valuable. Whereas if it's a situation where you don't have to give up a pick, I'm almost kind of questioning it. Like, I mean, again, every situation is different. There's always context, there's always nuance, but like in general, it's sort of like Lakers don't have a lot of attractive contracts that they're trying to trade. So if they don't have to give up a pick, like maybe it's shrewd negotiating, maybe they're getting one up over a rival. But logically, like all these guys we're talking about are probably going to require a first round pick in most scenarios. Okay. Danny D, do you think Jeremy Grant would improve our roster? I do. I know that his defensive metrics haven't been great. And I think, it's It's tough because you're not really supposed to talk. Like, there's some restrictions in terms of like talking to players and rival players or whatever. But if I'm the Lakers, I would try to do if Jeremy Grant, if it's a possibility and it's not going to cost 2 first-round picks and Portland lowers the price and he's interested in coming to play to LA, I try to arrange a call with like Rob and JJ and even LeBron and AD and sort of like pitch him on his role. And, you haven't been in a winning situation in several years. And like you've gone out, you've showed that you can be the guy, but there is a bit of a limitation there, right? And you've been on lottery teams as the guy and pretty bad teams as the guy, but come here, be the number 3 or number 4, however you want to look at it. And maybe it's a kind of a, like you can sell him as the number 3, but some nights it'll be Austin, some nights it'll be Dalton, depending on D'Lo and Rui, depending on which one of those guys is in the deal, which one of those guys stays. Like maybe that guy could be the number 3 some nights. Like it's going to kind of rotate, but in general, he's probably going to be billed as the number 3 if he comes here or comes to LA. But you kind of sell him on, hey, like be in a winning situation, help contribute to something. You can be this missing front court piece, but we're going to need you to defend like the Denver and OKC days. We're going to need you to rebound, and we're going to need you to buy into a smaller role where, again, the ball is going to go through LeBron and AD, but some nights it's going to be more Austin, Dalton, again, Rui or D'Lo, whichever one they keep, or maybe they trade both. But like there's going to be some nights where it's not your night, but if you can do the things we need you to do, we think we'll be successful, and we think we'll win, and we think we'll have a shot. If he buys into that notion, I think he can work really well and be the type of front court guy they need. If not, if he still wants a certain role, a certain number of shots, a certain number of points, if he's not fully committed to the defensive end of the floor, then I think you have to look elsewhere and you don't pull the trigger. So, and that could be a quick call, right? And that could, like, it doesn't have to be this big like Zoom meeting or in-person meeting or whatever. It's just kind of doing your due diligence, putting the feeler out there, with Portland's permission and with just sort of doing everything above board, above water. But I think if they can kind of have that conversation with him and gauge his interest level and really buying into a smaller role, depending on that answer, I think that would determine if I'm the Lakers, that would determine if I'm comfortable moving forward with him. Freddie Leon, hey Jovan, have you ever asked AD why he doesn't demand the ball during clutch minutes? Only scored once in the fourth quarter. He is our star, doesn't play like one at times. OKC really did a great job at doubling and trapping and swarming AD. And I mentioned it earlier, I probably could have gotten into it more. Like JJ took some onus for that. AD did not speak tonight. He declined to speak to the media. So I don't know if he was frustrated with that or whatnot. Like AD is someone who does, you can kind of tell post game that he gets pretty frustrated, and he'll answer questions very bluntly and honestly in a way that a lot of players won't. So I'm sure he was probably frustrated and was going to have plenty to say that, he maybe didn't want to say. But I mean, this has been an issue going back to last season. And I think it's if we want to do the blame pie game, it goes on AD, it goes on the guards / ball handlers, and it goes on the coaching staff. And I think each game is probably a little bit of a different blame pie in terms of some nights it's more AD, some nights it's more the ball handlers, some nights it's more the coaching staff. Tonight, I would say probably a little bit more on the coaching staff, in my opinion, in terms of, and JJ again took ownership for it in terms of saying like he could have put AD in better spots and could have called more sets and actions for him. So I would say it's a little bit more on that. But I also think OKC deserves a lot of credit, especially for being a relatively undersized team outside of Hartenstein. And Hartenstein's, I will say this, Hartenstein has been one of those, like we talk about Jokic and even Nurkic and like some of the Sabonis, some of the European centers that have at times given AD some problems from a physicality perspective. Hartenstein is not in that, he might not be a European big man, but although I think he does have some European heritage, I forgot from where, but he certainly has. 18 rebounds tonight. He's had success against AD in the past with the Clippers, with the Knicks. So he's a guy who, because of his size and physicality, can give AD some problems. But so I think Hartenstein deserves credit. I think the Thunder and their guards and the way that they defended AD deserve credit as well. I will say AD still had 7 assists. So I thought that, and only 1 turnover. So I think he was finding his teammates. He was still making a lot of the right decisions offensively. So I don't want to pile on AD, but this has been a trend. And the one thing I will say is he's not there are too many times he goes possessions or stretches without touching the ball. And can he demand the ball more? Sure. But I just don't think that's his personality. I don't think that's his demeanor. I just don't think that's how he carries himself. So I think that's just kind of intrinsic to who AD is. He's a little bit more on the quiet side. And does that maybe hurt him in the offense sometimes? Sure. But I also think this dude's been averaging 30 plus and been a monster. It also partly is on the guards and the ball handlers to get him the ball and to make sure they're properly spacing but that's also then partly on the coaching staff to make sure the offense is organized and they're running their post counters and trying to come up with different ways to get AD the ball to counter what OKC is doing. So I think the blame goes across, again, all 3 of those primary parties. Certainly AD could be more aggressive, could be more demanding of the ball. But as a center, which is the position he primarily plays, it's not like you're bringing the ball up the floor. They haven't done that as much with him recently. So it's not like he can't force himself to get the ball, especially with the way OKC was defending him. So in general, I put tonight less on AD and more on the coaching staff and the ball handlers. But I also think this is a thing that I remember talking about it so much last year, the year before. This has kind of been a trend where the offense goes away from AD far too often. And again, I think that there's multiple parties to blame, but to me, it's more contextual and nuanced depending on the game. And tonight, I just think OKC deserves a lot of credit. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of Bronny, a lot of Jeremy Grant, some Darvin. Well, I thought so. I'm seeing. I know Hartenstein's black, but he also. He's clearly he's also got some white from. I'm pretty sure. But I don't remember from where. Julian Chun, any chance to trade for Miles Turner? One pick plus 2. I think Miles Turner would cost 2 picks. I'd be interested in that, but I think he would cost 2. Zen said AD has been less active the whole game and has been the past few games. I said it earlier. I thought AD was really good defensively tonight. I think the defense has slipped No username 12 says German hair. I thought I was thinking German for Hartenstein. Dark Galaxy Nurkic hasn't given AD problems. He did not like, so AD always like busts him and even busted him in the bubble, right? In the Portland series. But I feel like there's been times he's been able to like score on AD, and from a physicality perspective, like out rebounded him and been like kind of pushing him around in the paint. Like, of course, AD, it's not the same as Jokic or Sabonis, where like those guys, like Jokic is better than AD, but Sabonis on a given night can be better than AD and can outplay AD. Nurkic never outplays AD, but just from like a big physicality perspective, I think there's been games. I was trying to think of like the European set, like, you know, you could throw Zubats, I think plays well against AD. There's probably another guy or two I'm forgetting. Yeah, L.A. on Hartenstein. He's German on his mom's side. So yeah, that was what I was. That's all I was saying with him. So I guess my point was he kind of qualifies as a European setter. Maybe not traditionally, but sort of in that way. Okay, now people are arguing about Miles Turner. L.A. Jovan, do you like Trey Mann for the Lakers? I do. I'm going to pull up. I just like to look at their numbers before I give you he's at 14 a game, 40% on 4.5 threes per game. My one thing is just he's small. Let me pull up his contract. He's expiring contract, $4.9 million. So, I mean, if you could flip JHS for him, sure. I think there's a lot of players I would take over JHS. If you could flip them for him. My only thing is, like, I think, especially because I'm high on Quincy, and I think there's a chance if they flip D'Lo and Gabe, you could play Quincy more at some point in the season. I just think point guard is so much lower, or a small guard is so much lower on the priority list for the Lakers. I think it's backup center, and then big and small wings. Okay. Rob Earth, hi Jovan. What moves will you make as Lakers GM to propel us to the top? Please be specific. Well, that's a good question. Well, quickly, I'm gonna say, no username says he's going to bed. Good night, no username. I hope you have a good night of sleep. Okay. Then Throne Alive says, TBH, I think we are okay as far as team, but not championship ready. I agree. So back to Rob Earth. What I would do, I would try and get Walker Kessler with a first round pick, and then I would try and get DFS or Bruce Brown with the first round pick. And ideally those would be the two moves. I think, again, I would say, like, the potential with Jeremy Grant, if he's willing to buy into the role and really commit himself to the defensive end, is there. I don't know if I want to bank on that or take that risk. And, you know, Portland's kind of been a weird team to trade with the last couple of years. So I would say Utah, if, you know, the one we've talked about a lot on here has been first round pick and then remove the top 4 protection from the 2027 pick that is owed. I would do that for Kessler, and then I try and get DFS or Bruce Brown with another first round pick. I would probably prioritize DFS just because he's bigger than Bruce Brown. Bruce Brown is also coming off of knee surgery. I would like to have a bigger sample size of what he looks like upon returning, but assuming that, you know, Bruce Brown looks fine, I'd be fine with that. But I would probably say Kessler and DFS are the two of the five guys I said. Those are the two best defenders. And if you add in those two guys, and like let's say, I think DFS starts, Kessler comes off the bench in this scenario. So let's say it's 80, LeBron, DFS, Dalton, and Austin. Then your bench is Kessler, one of Rui or Vando. You keep one of those two. I mean, honestly, if you're trading for Kessler, you could do JHS, and then maybe you're only giving up one of Rui, Vando, or D'Lo to Brooklyn to make the DFS work. So like you're keeping two of those guys as bench guys. What, maybe they even keep D'Lo, and let's say it's Rui has less. Yeah, I mean, you give up one of Rui or Vando, you keep one of those two, you keep D'Lo, or you end up flipping him in a different trade, and then you have like Max or Cam there as like the ninth guy, and like that to me, I like that a lot more than like the current. I think you got more size, you got more defense, the rotation makes more sense. So I think that's worth a first for Kessler, first for DFS, and or Bruce Brown, whatever. Dominic Mann's rotations were off tonight. Yeah, I said earlier, like I got not playing Koloko because I thought this would be a tough matchup. They would target him. It's a 5-out team. They have a lot of shooting, a lot of rotations, a lot of foot speed, or a lot of ground to make up defensively. So I didn't have an issue with Koloko not playing, but I thought Gabe played too much. I thought D'Lo should have either closed or played deeper into the fourth, and Austin also getting injured kind of screwed up the rotation because I think under normal circumstances he plays more than he ended up playing. And then you factor in 80 and LeBron not having great offensive nights, and at least from a scoring perspective, and that's how the Lakers have the night that they had. I mean, in general, I think the minutes distribution were fine. Like I thought Max played the best out of him, Cam, and Gabe, so I was fine with Max playing a little bit more in closing, but I thought I don't love that like second the group with like D'Lo, Gabe, Cam. I want to say I forgot if it was 8. I forgot who the other two bigs were. I think it might have been a small lineup, but there also might have been an 80 like Rui lineup. Like I don't really love Cam and Gabe playing together because I think you have two minuses offensively. And like, I think that the shifts that they played, they actually did okay, but I just think the offense was so bad that it almost offset how good the defense was. Ronnie Gutierrez should have played Dalton more in the third. Yeah, I would also say probably should have played Dalton more in the first half. There was a stretch there where like Dalton got hot early, and then they kind of went away from him, or like hit a couple shots early, and then they kind of went away from him for a while. I think he's still kind of figuring out the Dalton minutes because it's also, I think like between Rui, Dalton, Austin, and D'Lo, you have several guys that can be targeted, and I think JJ's trying to balance those minutes. And then, I mean, I think you could even throw LeBron onto that list. So it's like he's trying to kind of play whack-a-mole in terms of like, they have a lot of offensive firepower, but he's also trying to balance that with like not too many defensive liabilities. And I think that's kind of been a tricky balancing act for him. L.A. Jovan, would you rather have Olynyk or Pirtle? I would rather have Pirtle because of the defense. Rob Earth, Gabe Vincent missed 2 free throws. That should seal the deal to ship him out right away. Yeah, he got booed. When Gabe checked in the first time, he got booed. And then when he missed both free throws, he got booed after each one. So yeah, I mean the fans have clearly started. I mean, based on the conversations in here, they obviously have turned on him. But Android Andres, who's gonna come back first, Wood or Vando? I would bet on Vando, but I don't feel great about that. Jay, poor Gabe. I feel for the guy as a human. I do too. Gabe is a great guy. Like for whatever anyone wants to say about him as a basketball player, he is a professional who he works hard. He has the right mindset. He's a team first guy. He's completely come in and played a different role with the Lakers than he played it in Miami. Like, he has been a low usage defensive stopper type, and that's not who he was in Miami. And he's not complained. He's bought in. He obviously has not played well, so but yeah. Okay. Question from Eeg. Tonight concern super chat. Thank you for the super chat. Tonight concerns me because I think LeBron's burst in April is in question now. Is BI an option? Zion, ZL, Trey, unknown all-star, freeing. Thank you, Jovan. Are you mispronouncing my name because I've been mispronouncing yours? Because the correct way would be with a Y there, not an H. But I still love you either way. BI. I mean, he's an option. He's an option, but I don't love the BI fit. Zion, I mean, he's got to stay healthy, but I would be intrigued by that. ZL, I've said before, not a big Zach LaVine guy because he's going to cost you multiple players and he hurts your defense. Trey would be similar, but I just think Trey is a better player than Zach, both as a scorer, as a passer and playmaker. That one probably costs you Austin, and then potentially maybe an all-star. Like, I really don't think the Lakers are going to go third star hunting, to be honest. I think it's going to be smaller moves and maybe even splitting the difference where they only trade one of the two picks. But I don't see them getting a third star as of right now. Throne of Lies. What can Rui do to get more offense from him? He has potential. What can unlock it? I would say it's I think Rui is just becoming more of a situational offensive player. Tonight, I mean, he only took 7 shots, so he was 6th on the team. And he's a guy, I think LA's been trying to get D'Lo more involved and running more pick and rolls and more actions for him. So Rui's kind of taking a step back. Also Dalton taking a step, like Dalton led the team in shot attempts. And when you have LeBron and AD taking a certain amount of shots, Dalton now taking a certain amount of shots, Austin taking a certain amount of shots, now D'Lo's kind of been more empowered. Someone's going to kind of take a step back, and it's been Rui. So I think he's a guy that when teams cheat off of him, he can be a weak side weapon. And when teams have small front courts and or just put a smaller player on him, he could punish mismatches in the post with deep seals, with that little turnaround jumper. He does a good job cutting the baseline or cutting into like the free throw line area and getting some of those. Like he had one of those in the third quarter where he hits those like free throw line jumpers. So I think Rui's going to be fine. What I would like to see, I thought he was better defensively tonight and has been for a couple of games, but still continue to be more engaged and active on the defensive end. I like to see him get back to rebounding the ball better. He did have 5 tonight, including 3 offensive. So that the corner crashing and him being active on the glass, that's a positive thing. But I think with the way that Dalton has emerged and the way that D'Lo, LA is really trying to make sure he's still cooking and getting going, it does feel like Rui is becoming more of the 6th option, I guess. And if he's the 6th option, no matter how good your offense is, there's going to be nights where you get like 6-8 points. Tonight he had 8. So I think Rui is probably going to fluctuate depending on the game flow and the matchup. All right, I'm going one more minute, and then I'm going to wrap at. I got 2 super chats. Okay. Eeg, play on words of the GOAT, Hove and Yove. LOL. Okay, it was a compliment. Thank you, Eeg. I appreciate you. Keep up the good work. If you had to guess, asking price for Cam Johnson, are the Nets willing to deal with the Lakers? Could you see DFS plus DS plus Cam 2 or 3? One of 3. I would say I think they're going to ask for at least 2 firsts for Cam. It seems to be a high asking price. Nets willing to deal with the Lakers, yes. Although they've had some talks in the past, and obviously it's not led anywhere. I could see I would say one of those three is the most likely rather than two. But if I had to put it in order, I'd probably put it DFS, Cam, then Dennis third among those three. But I would say one is more likely than two. Then another super chat from BLC. D'Lo playing better. Need AD and LB to raise their level. Agreed. And look, D'Lo's played really well the last two games. So, Rob Earth, do you think AR's extensive playmaking has an impact on the offensive production? For sure. I think Austin's a guy who, when he's like physically drained, you can kind of tell by his shot and his legs and shots dropping short. So I think when that happens, you can kind of tell. Like tonight, he just didn't really have it. Android Andres, this is like D'Lo's second game in a row. He got to show more. Yeah, I mean, look, I've been fairly critical of D'Lo on here, so I'm not, like, but I want to give D'Lo his props. He's had two good games in a row, and I think he just played well and deserves the credit. Sizwe Blas Lonzo, I think he's got to get healthy and show he can be healthy for a bit. But I would be interested in theory. Dark Galaxy is a first round pick in 2 seconds, enough for Dennis and DFS. Yeah, I would even say that's probably an overpay. Jay, Jovan, do you know what these currencies are in the Super Chat? Global Superstar. I don't, but I appreciate any amount of Super Chat. Ron's Key, what are the Lakers' next games? They play at Utah Sunday, at Minnesota Monday, at Miami Wednesday, and at Atlanta Friday, and then home versus Portland Sunday. So actually next week is a four games next week, but if you include Sunday, so it's like an 8-day stretch. They play five games in 8 days. Jeremy Jazwinski, thanks for the energy tonight. Jovan, must take a lot to stay up so late, mate. Yes, but with that said, I am going to wrap here. I do have some more work to do. Then I got to pack tomorrow. It's my last day before traveling. But I'll be back. Of course, Sunday, I won't be going to the game. I'll actually be in Minnesota. So I'm skipping the Utah game. So I'll have a post-game reaction post-Minnesota or post-Utah, then another one post-Minnesota. Then I will have a new episode of Buha's Block, most likely on Tuesday. Sorry for no episode this week. It was kind of a crazy week. Had family stuff and then, traveling for the game and Thanksgiving and all that stuff. But we'll be back with 2 episodes next week and hopefully a pretty good guest. So I appreciate you all. If it was a night I didn't have to write, I would go for longer, but I do have to write. And yes, L.A. We'll be doing a Q&A at some point next week. Maybe Monday. Maybe Monday is the right day to do it in between Utah and Minnesota, because I'm traveling Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. It's a crazy, like the road trips are always crazy in terms of schedule. But I appreciate you all so much. Thank you all for watching and listening. For those on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. And for those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I will be back on Sunday night to cover the Lakers Jazz game. I will talk to you then, and hopefully I can go a little bit longer. But we'll see. I will definitely have a Q&A next week. And as I'll probably do a mailbag too. So if you guys, I'll post a prompt in the community section on YouTube. And then as always, if you guys have a question that I didn't get a chance to answer on here, I apologize, but please comment it on YouTube and I will do my best to get to it. So again, that will do it for tonight's show. Thank you all so much for watching and listening. I will talk to you soon.